the PSD EdTech Coaches Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5, The Power of Possibility, celebrating National School Psychology Week 2020 with special guest Ronald Smothers. Welcome to the PSD EdTech Coaches Podcast, a podcast for educators by educators that love to equip teachers, ponder, and discuss current issues and climate in education. With your hosts, Dan Hopman and Steve Stuckey. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're happy to be here recording with our special guest today. Dan, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. You know, it's definitely 2020, and it just seems that as we get closer to Thanksgiving, people are getting more tired. And I had asked during one of my PDs this week, what are you going to do over Thanksgiving? The overwhelming choice was sleep, and I can totally understand sleep.
Well, we had the time change and everything else too, which has totally wrecked me. I thought I would be more well rested. I'm definitely not. So yeah, there's still a lot of anxiety, whether it's with their jobs and teaching, or whether it's an election, or anything else that's been left out hanging. 2020 is doing its job on us, but we are trying to slowly get back to normal, if that will ever be a case. And one of the normal things that we used to do are the Tech Tuesdays. I know that they might not even be on Tuesdays. It could be a tech, Wednesday morning at 5 a.m. Who knows? But they're slowly coming back. We're starting to add some of those, and registrations will be advertised. I know that I have one coming up, I believe, on the 17th of November, which I'm going to look at Smart Notebook Part 1, which is just the basics that will lead us into creating interactive lessons, heading us towards Part 2 in December, where we will look at Smart Learning Suite Online, so we can make those lessons that we have developed interactive during our Zoom meetings with the kids, so that they get a little bit more out of what's going on. I think you have one coming up too.
Yeah, I'm going to have one. I need to figure out which day it's going to be on, because I know we're competing with other PDs in the district. We don't want to, bump up against other important PDs like Zern and
Amplify.
Footsteps to Brilliance. So Amplify. So we're trying to figure out where to place our PDs, but hang in there and keep an eye out for the schedule. We're trying to get that out as quick as we can. But yeah, so the one I'm going to be doing is going to be on Flipgrid Shorts. So I know it sounds like a Nickelodeon show. It really does. Flipgrid Shorts. So for those of you that use Flipgrid, it's nothing like Flipgrid. They just use some of the tools for Flipgrid and makes your life as a teacher a little bit easier. So we'll be going over that. And also that came out this week was the Google Workplace. Notice I use Workplace this time, not Suite. Google Workplace Level 1 certification, where you can get a $500 stipend for getting your Google certification for Level 1. I think that's really exciting.
And by the way, if you're not in Palmdale School District, that does not pertain to you.
That's very true. And if you've already gotten your Level 1 certificate, you cannot double dip and get it again. So this is going to be for anybody in Palmdale School District who has not gotten it the first time.
All right, so hopefully they'll open that up for Level 2 and Google Trainer. I think, there should be a big stipend for a certified Google Trainer.
$15,000.
$15,000 I think would be worth it, right?
All right, I think that's good. Well, we'll talk to people.
All right, so speaking of that, coming up on the week of November 9th through 13th, 2020, schools throughout the country are going to celebrate National School Psychology Week to highlight the important work school psychologists and other educators do to help all students thrive. The Board of Trustees, Palmdale School District, at their November 3rd board meeting, adopted a resolution proclaiming the week of November 9th through 13th as School Psychology Awareness Week, celebrating all of those school psychologists in our district. They play a vital role in the personal and academic development of our students. And so I guess that brings us right about now to our
It really
guest.
does. And so I have the pleasure to introduce Ronald Smothers, who is the psychologist over at Tumbleweed. Ronald, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and maybe a little bit of what psychologists do in Palmdale.
Thanks, Dan, for the introduction, and good morning to all of the listeners. Thank you, Steve and Dan, for having me on this morning. That is a big question with a very, very complicated answer, and so I want to uncomplicate it as much as possible. I think one of the biggest things that school psychologists are known for, especially in our district, is for testing students for special education. In that we look at, social and emotional functioning within the school setting and also within the home setting, because we also want to know what parents are seeing. We do processing assessments where we look at how a student is processing, and that could entail things like looking at memory or problem solving skills or their acquired knowledge or their auditory process and visual process. And we also look at things like executive functioning, anxiety. We can look at things like depression. Now, there is a caveat to that. We don't diagnose within the school setting. But what we do do is we look at what Ed Code says, or what the educational code, and there are 13 areas of disability that a student could possibly qualify for when we do those assessments. And so we're looking to see how the data that we have collected based upon all of those different measures that we measures and data points that we look at, how those things match up to Ed Code and if students qualify or if they don't qualify. So that's one big piece. Another piece is helping in gen ed, helping our general education populations, and that could be doing things like making referrals for school-based counseling if they need it, looking at things like students' performance, academic performance, discipline performance or behavior within the academic setting, and then coming up with interventions to help them within the classroom or within the different settings that where the students are on campus. So there's so much that we do. I could go on for another 30, 40, 2 hours, just talking about all of the different tasks that we have. So, I guess in that, one thing that I would say is I love being a school psychologist, and I know that you guys didn't ask that question, but just wanted to throw that in there. I love being a school psychologist. I love what I do because I get to work with students and get to work with them in so many different ways. So on one day I may be looking at grades, and on the next day I may be talking to a student about something that took place in a classroom, and the next day I may be doing something totally different. So we have a lot of responsibilities. We have a lot of tasks, and all of the school psychologists that I know absolutely love what they do.
So you mentioned that you love working with the kids, but tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? How did you get into, or even wanting to be a psychologist?
Ooh, So let's see. When I'm going to give you the short version of a very long story. So when I was going through school, K through 12, I was a student who had a lot of behavioral difficulty. And so I eventually ended up, going to high school, and in that time span being told that, I wasn't going to go to college, wouldn't make it to 18 years of age, so on and so forth, by some of the educators that I work with. So, or that I learned under, because I've exhibited a lot of problematic behavior, but that just doesn't justify what those educators said, unfortunately. But I say that to say that I had no intention of going to college. And prior to going to college, I went to the military and served in the Marine Corps and spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, went overseas a couple of times. And then when I got back, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do and enrolled in college, and didn't have much success there initially. But because of some of the things that I had experienced as a child, and then eventually, had some good mentors that kind of helped me kind of pick a path and guided me on that path. And went through community college and then went to Cal State Fullerton and graduated out of there and went on to graduate school and got a degree in school psychology. Now, how I got there is while I was doing my undergrad, I was doing some student teaching. And while I was doing student teaching, I was doing student teaching in Santa Ana, California, Santa Ana Unified School District, and was with one of their more challenging schools. And in just the day-to-day of doing the student teaching, there was a lot of barriers, social and emotional things, students not, getting good rest, students having difficulty with learning because of reading deficits or writing deficits, difficulties in math. And so I was more interested in that than just that being in the classroom as a teacher. And so given that and having another mentor at that particular school that I was at kind of say, okay, well, I see, I'm listening to your concerns and I'm hearing, the things that you're discussing, you might want to check out school psychology. And honestly, that was my first introduction to school psychology. I had no clue that school psychology was even a thing or a field. And so after hearing about it and exploring it a little further, I decided to go down that path and, here I am.
Well, this is 2020 and everything is different. So you went over what psychologists are kind of doing on an everyday basis, but how has that changed with remote learning?
I'd say it's changed significantly. I am in constant contact with parents more than I have ever been. That seems to be the running theme of my day. Just being in contact with parents, helping them to not only navigate distant learning, but helping them with strategies in order to help their students in the home setting.
Well, while you're on that subject then, and let's talk a little bit about some tips for students and parents and teachers maybe as well in how they navigate this at home and can take care of what they need to take care of, get focused on what they need to get focused on, and have a time where this can be a place where they thrive versus disintegrate, I guess, not being in school.
I think that's an excellent question. And with every single parent that I talk to, I emphasize the fact that 2020 is a strange year, and the things that we are experiencing, no one has experienced this before in our lifetime and in our generation. Within our, the current people who are alive today. So one thing that broke down for just about everyone is our routines. And that is very, very important for our students. And I talk to parents kindergarten through 8th grade. And it's one thing that I emphasize to them is that, if you have a 7th grader, your child has spent 7 or 8 years with a lot of structure in the sense that they know that at a certain point in the morning, I'm going to be going to school. For a certain amount of time every day, I'm going to be at school. And then after school is over, I get to come home, and then I'm no longer at school. I get to be at home. Being at home may entail doing some homework and maybe doing some follow-up from their day, but I'm still at home. And that was not only the kind of a tradition, but it was a ritual that we were very, very used to and that we expected. Those rituals, those routines have broken down as of March for us, because that's when we went out on to this distant learning model. And so this is very foreign to our students, but it's also very foreign to our parents as well. So our students are at home right now. There's a lack of routine in the sense that you almost don't know what's coming next. Whereas when we were in school, things were more predictable. And so one of the tips that I would give in that is that we have to reestablish routines within the home setting as much as possible.
That would be for both parents, and then teachers can really help that out by setting a great routine every day.
Absolutely.
So parents know what to expect too.
Absolutely. And not only setting that routine, but sticking to it. And doing that, it provides some predictability, not only for our students, but also for our parents as well. It can be very, very overwhelming trying to figure out what you're going to do next when you really don't have any idea what's going to happen next. So when we create those routines, it provides that structure, and we can also structure that routine so we can have that predictability and know what's going to happen next. It doesn't have to be a mystery. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to cause us to be stressed out or experience anxiety or other emotional responses that would be detrimental to us at this time. So I can't emphasize that enough. Routine. It's so important. So important.
Routines definitely are important. And I can see that if I'm not in a routine, my whole day, week, everything gets totally messed up.
Right.
And that means mentally, physically, everything. We are creatures of routine, especially if you've been a teacher, for so many years. You are used to a routine. You get to school at this time. You set up your lessons. You do this. You teach the kids. Routines play an important role. And you know what? I have never yet met a teacher in a classroom who doesn't want their students to thrive. And it's great that we have people like school psychologists and so on to help support us and come alongside both the teachers and the kids to make that happen. But as we've been saying, your job role has changed completely in 2020. 2020 has made everything more difficult, period, for all stakeholders. So think about, and I'm sure you can maybe give us some insights because you say you're talking with parents a lot and probably with students as well. What has student responses been like to this pandemic, and how has been being at home for them? What has it been like for them, and then how do you actually support them in those instances?
Well, I think again that's a great question. And I'm sitting here and I'm kind of just shaking my head. I know that they can't see us, or the listeners can't see us. So I just wanted to put that out there because there was a kind of a slight pause for me. Some of the things that our students may be exhibiting at home is they may be showing signs of anger, signs of frustration. They may have difficulty sleeping. They may present as defiant. They may present with a lack of focus. Our parents may see their students moving more and saying, I've never seen that behavior before. What is the deal with this? Our students may be presenting with avoidance and may just, in some cases, present, with negative attitudes with regards to academic work or home tasks as well. And then on the flip side of that, we have some students who are very, very happy that they're at home. From some of our students, this model of distant learning, works very well for them. And they've adapted very well. They're thriving at home, and they're doing a very, very good job. I was looking at grades for my middle school for some of our students a couple of days ago, and I was just in awe at the performance of some of the students, some of our top achievers. They're doing really, really well. I think that there's a number of different ways that, or let me go back for a second. So yes, our students are having, they're having difficulty at home. Distant learning is again, it's very foreign. It could be challenging, especially when we have students who are trying to figure out, again, what's the routine? What is that next step? So
you do know that everything you've explained so far sort of describes my household, and I don't have any children, so let me just let it rest right there.
That's pretty funny.
So how does a teacher help a parent with their kids who are exhibiting that behavior? And I don't know how many parents actually watch our podcast. Mainly they're educators, but how do we as teachers help our parents with those kids that are exhibiting these types of behaviors?
I think one way it's about helping parents. So as educators, we have a wealth of information with regards to how to set up a classroom, how to establish routines in a classroom, how to write social contracts, how to write schedules, how to deal with behavior, how to manage behavior, and so for educators, all of that information is in our head, and we use it in the educational setting when those students are present with us. That information now, as students are at home, is still with us, and I think the biggest thing is we have to communicate those things to our parents.
Teachers have said, I've been communicating with parents more than ever, but it's sending messages. Your kid's not online right now. They're not on Zoom. They need to turn on their camera. They're not doing their work. But what I hear you saying is we need to invite them in,
right, and
actually teach them how to support what's going on. And let's show them how to set up a good workspace. Let's explain that you shouldn't have the music blasting throughout the house while your kid's trying to learn online with a teacher.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to that structure and that routine that we were getting at earlier, Steve. Those things, you could not have said it more perfectly. When learning time is taking place, it's learning time. There's no phones, there's no iPads, there's no TV. Those devices and those things need to be turned off unless they are being used for learning, of course. But those devices should be silenced. They should be put away. And that time of the day where learning is to occur, that should be the focus. And I think that educators, teachers could relay that information, and it'd be very, very helpful to parents. I think that's one of the things that I've come across a lot, is that parents are telling me that their child, they have the cell phone or they're watching TV while they are trying to do their work. And for some of our students, that may work. Some of our students may need background noise. They may need music. They may need that white noise in the background in order to help them to focus. But for other students, it's a major distraction. It's a major source of distraction. And so we want to eliminate those distractions as much as possible. And one thing that our teachers and fellow educators could do is relay that information to parents. Sometimes we assume that everyone has the same information, instead of asking and checking to actually see if they had that information. And that's something that I do sometimes as well. Sometimes I assume and then I ask, and it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that you did not know. So let me, inform you in order to help you to be able to better navigate the situation.
And oftentimes, especially in our culture today, we want things instantly. We want it instantly fixed. We want the whole picture. We want it done for us, when often you have to do things in small little parts. I've always said in my trainings, how do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. You can't do the whole thing at once. And I think part of what we do is make small changes, both as educators, school psychologists. We call you an educator as well. We make small little changes, positive changes, to help support these and give them short, attainable goals to try and do, both students and parents at home, I guess.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that, because that's definitely something that I continue to inform parents and teachers of. It's one step at a time. It's one step at a time. It might just be for the day getting the student to get on Zoom. And then that next day, we add another goal in there, which is, turning on the mic or turning on the camera. And then that next step is participating with the assignment. So definitely, I agree with everything that you just said there, that, it's one step at a time, especially, again, given where we are. This is very, very foreign to our parents, to our students, and us as educators. And so if we try to do too much all at once, we're either not going to get anything done, or we're going to stress ourselves out, overwhelm ourselves, and cause ourselves to have other issues.
Yeah, and that on top of every other little piece of anxiety people are feeling, just seems to overwhelm people, and that leads us into depression and other issues that uh, don't need to be there if we can
Absolutely.
support people correctly.
And I know from a teacher standpoint, one of the things that Steve and I have imparted some of our advice with, and even here on the podcast, is when, even as a teacher, when we start feeling that overwhelming need to, just sort of scream into a pillow, to just sort of stop,
And
take
scream
a walk,
into a pillow.
and then scream into a pillow. That's a lot of the anxiety is not having that social interaction with each other, and depending on the screen in front of us for that back and forth, and missing that one-on-one with someone, that connection that we normally would have, and that includes our kids.
Absolutely. And again, I think that leads into another part of the conversation: self-care. It's so important, and that's something else that I continuously emphasize with parents. You have to take care of yourself, and educators as well. We have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of anyone else. And so it may be exactly doing what you just said, taking a 5-minute break, getting up from the screen. And this is also for our students. I talk to a lot of parents, and they say, well, my son moves a lot. Is he allowed to get up from the screen? And my response always is absolutely. Absolutely. Let him get up and take that break. If that's what he needs in order to be an effective learner and an active participant in his learning, then allow him or her to do that. And allow yourself to do that as well. There's nothing saying that we can't get up and take that 5-minute break. And if you say, I don't have 5 minutes, well, start with 10 seconds and then increase it from there. It could be 60 seconds. You could take just a small brain break where you just take a few deep breaths, or get up and stretch. I think that's really important in and of itself, just being able to get up and physically stretch, just to stretch your body and to, in a sense, let go of some of that inactive energy. I'm going to call it that inactive energy that we have just from sitting down. So get up and move, go outside and walk around your front yard or your backyard or your patio, or if you have like a street, walk up and down the street. Just anything that you can do to kind of break up take a break from being on the screen, but also give yourself a break in the sense that, you're doing something else in that moment.
Right. And other small little things, that you can say, you realize that you're not okay probably. And so you should probably ask some questions, like, if it's daytime, are you dressed, or are you still in your pajamas doing school in your bed? I mean, and parents, if you're listening, you might want to help support them by saying, you're going to school today. Get up, take a shower, clean up, brush your teeth, let's eat breakfast, get dressed, and let's go to work.
Right, absolutely. And that goes back to that routine. And so one thing that I always tell parents is to identify a designated space in your home where learning is to occur. That is the space where learning is to occur. It is used for nothing else besides that. Give me 1 second. I apologize. My dog is barking.
That's what live podcasts are all about. Let's hear it for the dog, right?
But I think that's good, because it kind of speaks to the fact that we're all at home, and we're teaching from home, we're working from home, we're doing things within our actual living spaces. So
you've messed up that dog's routine. I'm letting you know that right now.
I absolutely have. He doesn't know what to think right now. So So yes, with going back to that routine, is just establishing that dedicated space within the home setting that your child knows is going to be used for learning. And the reason why I say that is, if your child gets out of bed and stays in the bed with their Chromebook, well, the thought process there is the bed is used for sleeping. I'm still in the bed, so I can take a quick nap, or I may just lay down and want to rest, or thinking I'm going to rest, but my body knows that the bed is used for sleeping, and so that's what the body wants to do there. If you're in a designated space such as the couch or a dining room table, or a space outside on the patio, and you know that, okay, from the hours of 8 to 2 or 8 to 3, I'm going to be out here learning. Well, then that's going to be that routine, and only use that space for that. It helps to not only establish that routine, it also establishes predictability, and it helps the child's mind get into that process of, okay, when I'm here, this is what I'm doing.
And I think also having the students set up their own workspace so that way they own that workspace and this is where I go to work. I think that a lot of that has something to do with it as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it gives buy-in. Buy-in is very important. So buy-in, and then they can personalize it to make it theirs. I think another a very important thing there is to print out your student's schedule. And educators, send your, and I know that this is being done, but make some type of chart or a scheduled chart and send it to your parents that they can print out. I do that a lot for parents when I'm creating visuals, because a lot of our students, they need that visual input, they need that visual feedback. Some of them could hear the direction and hear you say, hey, you got math, your math class in 10 minutes, go get on Zoom. But then we have students who will say, okay, and then they will forget, or their mind may go somewhere else, or they may have something else on their mind. So having that visual not only gives them the opportunity to say, okay, I see what's taking place next, but with our older students, it gives them some responsibility as well.
Probably parents, teachers, and then involving the students can really maybe help things out. Like before the whole day starts, is just give 10 minutes of your time to sit back and figure out and explain what the game plan is for the day. Ask the student, if you're a parent, ask the student, what is your game plan for the day? How is your day going to look? If they don't have an answer to that, the parent needs to either talk to a teacher, or the teacher needs to make that game plan crystal clear so those students know what to expect, all back to those routines, it appears.
Absolutely. And doing it together too, having the student, if the student is old enough, I have to keep saying it because I know some of our students and teachers, work with kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and they may not be at that level yet where they can independently identify things in their day and how to get things done. So,
but great opportunity for a parent to come up with their kid and say, you know what, here's what you've got going on today. The first thing you're going to do, it looks like you're going to be doing language arts with Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so, and have you practiced your sight words or something simple just so that they can get a mindset of, I'm going to work.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up here, Ronald, is there any other advice you can give teachers or really any adult who might be listening, with these crazy times? What can we do to help kind of just have some self-care?
I think the biggest thing is just be flexible and be patient with ourselves. These are unprecedented times, and we have enormous amounts of responsibility to all of the stakeholders, to ourselves, to our schools, to our district, to our students, to our kids, because we do, a lot of us do have children. And so, be patient and be flexible with yourself. Allow yourself chance to just breathe and take time for yourself and to exercise some form of self-care. You can easily do a Google search for tips on self-care. There are all types of flyers and articles and quick graphics that you can find on Google about different strategies that you can use for self-care. And some of the things may not work for everyone, but I guarantee you with a quick Google search, you'll find something that works for you.
That is the greatest resource tool on the planet, by the way. Google it, right? Well,
absolutely.
Next week being National School Psychology Week, we have one of our school psychologists here, Ronald. We thank you so much for joining us, giving us some insights on ways that we can help our kids thrive, as you say, in these unprecedented times while they are at home doing some distance learning. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ronald.
And with that, Dan, I think it's time to say
Adios.
adios. Till next time, stay healthy.
Wash your hands.
Google self-care.